Liz Cambage got divorced. Wow, I didn't even know she was married. Welcome to Escaping the Echo Chamber. Liz Cambage and the LA Sparks have agreed to a contract divorce. Now, this isn't the first time I've heard that term, contract divorce. This year, Tina Charles agreed to a contract divorce from Phoenix Mercury. That suggests a level of dysfunction within the WNBA that can't be ignored, but a lot of people are ignoring it. Why? Because it's Liz Cambage. This time people are ignoring that. Here's the deal. If you don't know, Liz Cambage actually was the talk of the league earlier this year because of some alleged comments she had made regarding Nigerian players and regarding the Nigerian national team when they were engaged in a scrimmage with Australia's team, which is what the team she was playing for at the time. She disputed the overall tone of what was said. However, when she issued a statement, I pointed out that her statement was very carefully worded, that she said, well, I didn't say that slur that I was accused of saying. She didn't say, I didn't say any slur. She said, I didn't say that slur. So initially I was looking at the case and like, where's the video? Where's the evidence? If they're saying she said this, because we're seeing a portion of the scrimmage on video. If they're saying she said this, show us the rest of the video where she actually says these things. But once her denial came out, I was like, okay, like we're going to call it balls and strikes right down the lane. We're going to call it even. That denial was suspect as hell. And I've got to imagine that that didn't help her interactions with teammates. So fast forward to this week, she agrees to a contract divorce, and people are like, you know what? When you're having problems with everybody, maybe you need to look in the mirror and realize it's you. And yes, that's a great statement, because if you're always beefing with people, maybe it's not everybody else, maybe it's you. But I'm looking at this situation slightly differently. And there's a reason why. Because there's not only one person, one entity in this situation that is kind of, looked at funny. I'll explain what I mean in a moment. But people are criticizing her. They're going off on her. People are like, oh yeah, we knew this was coming. And there's not a lot of details coming out. There's some details with her wanting a jersey number that was retired. They said, no, you can't get that number. Then her saying, okay, well, I want her number, pointing to a current player on the team. I want her number. And they're like, but she's wearing it. Like, I want her number. Now, this is alleged, but that's the story that's coming out. Ultimately, they gave her that woman's number. And so that couldn't have went over too well with at least that player. But they said there's been other drama. She's been complaining about getting touches, just about gameplay and everything. Some people have attributed it to her not being in proper conditioning. But then I look at the fact that the Los Angeles Sparks earlier this year fired their head coach, Derek Fisher. Derek Fisher from the LA Lakers was fired. I wonder if this has anything to do with it. Why? Here's why I say. Because if he was the head coach and if he had a lot to do with making her feel welcome, making her feel invited, his departure could definitely change the tide. Because when she came to LA this year, she was like, oh man, I feel great. I'm finally protected. I finally feel good. So that would suggest that the head coach was one of those people that was making her feel like this was a great place for her to be. Once Derek Fisher is fired, that potentially changes the situation for her. But I wanted to touch back to what I said about the other entity. Because yes, Liz Cambage is apparently having issues with, over in LA, in Las Vegas, and people are like, well, maybe it's her. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. Because I could seem to remember that there's an entity that's involved in this that people have been making statements about and questioning about for quite some time. And that entity isn't the LA Sparks. That entity is the WNBA. People have been asking questions and complaining about the WNBA as a whole anyway. And this is for quite some time. From why is it not doing as well to what's the problems going internally, what's up with the mismanagement when you've got players that are having to pay for their own tickets to travel to games. The WNBA actually threatened to eliminate a team, the New York Liberty, because their owners, Joe and Clara Tsai, were privately flying players to games. So at this point, I'm like, wait a minute, there's not just one entity involved in this situation that people have been like, oh, there's a lot of problems with that particular entity. The WNBA in itself is quite suspect. And so the question is, who's at fault? Liz Cambage or the WNBA? And I'm going with the WNBA. Let me tell you why. And it's not just about Liz Cambage, it's about something that a former player who I really liked had said. But I will get to that in a moment. First, I want to just talk about how Liz Cambage actually might be right. So people may be saying her behavior, she's acting like it's all about her. And, no, she's got to be a team player. I'm like, wait a minute, but we've acknowledged that the WNBA isn't really being operated properly. Also, we know these women aren't getting paid that much. That's why Brittany Griner is in a Russian prison, because Brittany Griner had to play in Russia just to make more money, because she's not making a lot of money playing for the WNBA. In fact, years ago, Becky Hammon, who is now the current coach of the Las Vegas Aces, got her first $1 million contract in Russia. She didn't get it in the WNBA, that's for damn sure. But the point is, if Liz Cambage realizes that the pay that she's getting in the WNBA isn't that sufficient, you'll say, well, hey, there's no other league. But Liz Cambage is, in addition to being a WNBA player, a DJ, a model, and it has an OnlyFans page. I don't know how much her OnlyFans page is making, but if it's profitable, she has options. Her modeling career as a model for Rihanna's brand, Savage Fenty, appears to be doing well. Liz Cambage has options. So may Liz Cambage's behavior be different than certain other women? Absolutely. Do I think it could be justified? Absolutely. Because Liz Cambage may just be at the point where she doesn't have to settle for the bullshit. She may be at the point where she could be like, no, I don't have to put up with the nonsense and the horrible mismanagement in this league, because I have options. I can do other things. Unfortunately, for many other women, this may be their best venue. They've spent their college careers focusing on their athletic ability, focusing on their athletic careers. And basically, that's their number one thing. That's their number one go-to for a career. Liz Cambage appears to have options. But I want to touch back on to another thing about why I said that other player. You see, I was wondering about Liz Cambage, because if you see Liz Cambage, she's frequently decked out wearing very sexy outfits and looking good. And the question is, what many people have questions about many of the women in the WNBA, is she gay? I didn't realize how many gay women were in the WNBA many years ago. And then like when Cheryl Swoops, who had been formerly married to a man, got married to a woman, I was like, huh. Then we have Candace Parker, who also was formerly married to a man, is now married to a woman. Huh. And then I look at just how many of the women in the WNBA are just openly gay. And I'm like, huh? And then I remember what Candace Wiggins said. Candace Wiggins, if you don't know her, she won the Wade Trophy in her last year of college. Now you may say, okay, well, she probably wasn't playing up against anybody that year. No, that year, her last year of college, she was leaving college at the same time as Candace Parker and Sylvia Fowles. Candace Wiggins is the one that won the Wade Trophy that year. So she went number 3 in that draft pick. Candace Parker went 1, Sylvia Fowles went 2, Candace Wiggins went 3. And had this been any other year, Candace Wiggins easily could have been number 1. She retired from the New York Liberty. And when she retired, she made some statements about the treatment she had received in the league. She had commented that as a heterosexual woman, she was targeted and faced discrimination on the basis that she wasn't gay. Now, could it be just something imagination? Maybe. Could it be her own issues with gay people? Possibly. Could it be accurate? If you're seeing that constantly women that appear to be heterosexual suddenly becoming gay during their course of the league, it makes you wonder, at the very least, are there sufficient controls in place to stop potential sexual harassment and hostile work environments as it relates to activities between players and other women. Because I'm pretty sure they've got those controls in place if you're dealing with male coaches. I sincerely hope they do. I don't know if they have such controls and mechanisms in place as it would apply amongst the women. Because you're constantly seeing, like, there's been instances of players who are involved in relationships with other players, and things have blown up. Things have gone south, way south, including the assault allegations from a player who was allegedly being very forceful with her advances and more. So it makes me wonder if indeed there is a hostile environment towards heterosexual women, especially an openly and outspoken heterosexual woman. Because if that's the case, then that could be just another reason why the WNBA is failing. And it's something they should definitely address. Because both the gay woman and the heterosexual woman should be able to have a positive, non-hostile work environment, but we're not entirely sure that's the case. But it boils down to the fact that if there really is a culture that is not ideal for a heterosexual woman, as Candace Wiggins has alleged, Candace Wiggins went pretty deep in her telling and talking about how, and she used the figure, she said it was metaphorically, not a literal figure of 98%, but clearly meaning that an overwhelming majority of the league was gay and that she was not treated well being a vocally heterosexual woman. It makes you wonder, if that's the case, why a woman like Liz Cambage might be having butting heads with individuals. But you may say, well, how do you know that Liz Cambage isn't gay? Well, Liz Cambage actually did an interview and she said that people assume that she's gay because ball player, athlete, female athlete. And she said, and for a while I was wondering, asking myself, and I'm like, but no, I like men. That's who I am. So apparently, according to Liz, she is a heterosexual woman, an openly heterosexual woman. And I do find it interesting that she said people kept asking if she's gay. She didn't say who these people were. That's what I find interesting. And so I also think that that might be something that the WNBA might look at if they haven't already looked at. I'm not behind the scenes. I don't know if they actually would consider or have considered paying attention to that, because it's easy to look at sexual harassment when you're dealing with male and females. When it's dealing with same-sex sexual harassment, it may not be as obvious an issue to pay attention to. But as always, don't forget to hit the thumbs up, like, share, subscribe if you have not subscribed already. But if you disagree, if you think, no, this isn't on the WNBA, and this isn't because she has options, this is because Liz Cambage is toxic, go ahead and give me the thumbs down and state why in the comment section. I'll see you next time.